In a time long past, in the fertile lands bordering the great Mediterranean Sea, the city-states of the Canaanites flourished. These people, rooted in rich plains and lush hills, shared a vibrant culture and a religion deeply intertwined with the land they cultivated. At the heart of this faith was the worship of Baal, the mighty god of rain and fertility. Baal, whose name echoes as Lord, was not just another idol among many, but the central force upon which the seasons and harvests revolved. It was believed that his power controlled the skies, summoning clouds to dance to the rhythm of his thunder. With every lightning bolt that split the sky, the Canaanites saw Baal's hand directing the heavenly waters that promised a bountiful land and prosperous herds. Baal's significance was evident in the grand temples built in his honor, adorned with rich tapestries and fragrant offerings. Great festivals marked the beginning and end of planting and harvest seasons, and it was during these celebrations that the communion between God and devotee was most intense. Men and women, young and old, gathered to sing hymns and perform sacred dances, hoping their devotion would echo in the ears of the God who controlled life and death. But this worship wasn't just an act of faith, it was a matter of survival. Rain was as essential as the sun for the Canaanites, and its absence could mean famine and desolation. Thus, Baal was not only adored, he was implored, feared, and revered as the guardian of Canaanite existence. Baal's rise to supreme deity status reflected the deep connection the Canaanites had with the natural world, a relationship built not just on dependency but a near-fearful respect for the power that governed the elements of nature. In this setting of ancient faith and ancestral lands, Baal became more than just a name. He became the symbol of a civilization that found in the divine the explanation for the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth they observed in the land they loved. And so, amid adoration and fear, the legend of Baal grew, as enduring as the rains he sent, shaping the destiny of a people intertwined with the divine. In the beating heart of Israel, under the shadow of an eternal covenant, the words of Yahweh, the one true and sovereign God, resounded in the ears of his chosen people. "You shall have no other gods before me," echoed this divine voice, a proclamation not only of sovereignty but of protection against the corruptions that plagued neighboring nations. While the nations around bowed before stone altars under Baal's aegis, the Israelites were called to a different path, marked by a singular relationship with a God who spoke through prophets and burned in bushes that did not consume. Yet the human heart, often fickle and seduced by the spectacles of pagan religions, found itself drawn to the promises of prosperity and power that the worship of Baal flaunted. The generations of Israelites, though nourished by miracles and led by commandments etched in stone tablets, found themselves in constant conflict between loyalty to the invisible and attraction to the tangible. The cult of Baal, with its vibrant rituals and festivals laden with promises of agricultural fertility and prosperity, was a palpable temptation, a spark that threatened to ignite the unity and identity Yahweh had woven among his people. Kings ascended the throne of Israel, each faced with the choice to strengthen the bonds with their God or to veer towards paths adorned with idols. The temple in Jerusalem, centered on exclusive worship of the Lord, sometimes found itself overshadowed by altars erected on the hilltops, where the smoke of sacrifices to Baal stained the sky. This division not only eroded faith but also sowed seeds of deep political and spiritual crises. Prophets, clothed with divine authority, raised their voices in public squares and palace corridors, challenging both kings and peasants with visions and warnings against idolatry. Elijah, with the audacity that only divine certainty provides, confronted the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel in a duel of faith aimed at restoring hearts to the true God. The forbidden worship of Baal, although marked by episodes of repentance and spiritual renewal, remained an open wound, witnessing the ongoing struggle between the divine covenant and human inclinations. The story of Israel reflected this internal battle, a dance between devotion and disobedience, between Yahweh's eternal promises and the momentary seductions of gods who promised rain and harvests but ultimately led to ruin and exile. With each choice to follow Baal, the Israelites not only defied a commandment but wove their destiny with threads of fragility and failure, discovering, often too late, that the price of infidelity was the loss of what they valued most, their unique relationship with the God who had freed and loved them from the beginning. In the valleys shadowed by ancient trees and on the slopes hidden from Yahweh's gaze, the altars of Baal rose, scenes of rituals that swung between ecstasy and horror. Here, the air was filled with the heavy odor of incense, and the sound of drums echoed, calling the faithful to participate in ceremonies that promised power and prosperity, but at a terrible price. The rituals of Baal worship were a spectacle of religious fervor and deadly excesses. Animals were brought to the altars, not as part of a serene offering, but as symbols of blood and sacrifice. The spilled life of these creatures sought to appease Baal's thirst for reverence and recognition, a graphic demonstration of loyalty that starkly contrasted with the peaceful offerings of grains and perfumes prescribed in the laws of Moses. In addition to the bloodshed, the worship of Baal included the practice of ritual prostitution, where promiscuity was intertwined with the sacred. Men and women, under the guise of religious devotion, would give their bodies in acts of worship that sought to mimic the fertility that Baal was believed to control. These encounters, shrouded in mysticism, eroded human dignity and challenged the divine design of pure and committed relationships, as taught in the scriptures. Mutilation, another dark act often practiced in Baal's rituals, was an extreme expression of devotion. Believers marked their bodies with cuts and burns, an attempt to connect with the divine through physical pain and permanent alteration of the flesh. This ritual, distressing in its essence, stood in stark contrast to the God of Israel, who sought a broken heart, not a mutilated body, as a sign of true faith. These dark rituals, carried out in the shadow of grotesque statues and under the indifferent gaze of Baal, painted a picture of a distorted faith, one that sought to manipulate the forces of nature and spirituality through brutal and desperate means. In contrast, worship of the God of Israel was an invitation to reflection and respect for life, a call to serve with love and reverence, not fear or aggression. The distinction between these two paths of faith was as clear as day and night. While one path led to destruction and chaos, the other guided toward redemption and peace. In this contrast, the Israelites faced the daily choice between following Baal's dark ways or the path illuminated by Yahweh, a decision that would echo through their lives and the history they continually wove under the sky of the chosen. In the complex framework of ancient Near Eastern beliefs, Baal worship presented an intriguing peculiarity. There wasn't just one Baal but many. Each community, city, and region worshipped its own lord, shaping Baal in the image of local peculiarities and perceived needs. These Baalim, as they were known, reflected a decentralized devotion deeply rooted in the life and culture of the people who worshipped them. On a city's hill, Baal might be invoked as the Lord of Storms, the one who commanded the skies and brought rain for the crops. In another, he was the protector of warriors, the unbeatable Lord of War whose blessings were sought before every battle. This diversity created a mosaic of faith that, while united by Baal's name, varied dramatically from place to place. For the Israelites, this practice was a constant challenge and a perennial threat. The law given to Moses at Sinai preached worship of a single God, Yahweh, whose character and commandments were consistent and universal for all the tribes of Israel. The existence of the Baalim, however, offered an appealing and accessible alternative, especially in times of crisis or when Yahweh's blessings seemed distant or delayed. The proliferation of the Baalim in neighboring regions and even within some areas of Israel eroded religious unity and, by extension, the national identity of the Israelites. Each altar to a local Baal was a symbol of division, a testament to fragmented loyalties, not only among different gods but also between different conceptions of society and morality. The prophets of Israel, seeing this fragmentation as spiritual and social corrosion, raised their voices in protest. They not only condemned the worship of these foreign gods but also rebuked the people for abandoning the covenant with Yahweh, for trading the eternal stability offered by God for the temporary and uncertain solutions of the Baalim. This tension between unity under Yahweh and diversity under the Baalim manifested in cycles of apostasy and reform, where kings and leaders sometimes attempted to eliminate the pagan altars, and at other times succumbed to the temptation to adopt them. Each choice was reflected in the chronicles of the kings of Israel and Judah, each page a narrative of the struggle between faithfulness to one God and infidelity to many. The fight against the Baalim wasn't just a theological battle, it was a human drama played out in the everyday lives of every Israelite. It was a choice between the path set by ancestors and the seductive paths offered by neighbors, between the promise of an eternal blessing and the temptation of immediate gratification. At its core, this story reveals not just a confrontation between gods, but between different worldviews, each vying not only for followers but for hearts and minds. In the depths of Canaanite mythology, a theater of deities vied for dominance over the natural elements and cosmic order. Central to these mythological narratives was Baal, the bold lord of storms, whose power was both revered and feared. He wasn't just a figure of worship, he was a protagonist in a celestial saga where the balance of the seasons and the world's well-being were constantly at stake. The most vibrant legend of Baal tells of his titanic confrontation with Mot, the god of death and sterility. This battle was not merely physical but a representation of the eternal cycle of life and death, renewal and destruction. Baal, with his mantle of clouds and thunderous voice, challenged the barrenness and desolation brought by Mot, fighting not just for supremacy but for the very fertility of the land he loved so much. As the seasons changed, the mythological narrative described Baal being defeated and taken to the underworld, an event that coincided with times of drought and scarcity in the land. Sadness and mourning permeated the hearts of the Canaanites, who saw in these moments of divine defeat a reflection of their own struggles against nature's forces. But the story didn't end there. Baal would rise again, revived and restored, bringing with him the rejuvenating rains of spring, symbolizing hope and renewal. This mythology mirrored the spiritual and physical battles faced by the Israelites, who saw in the stories of Baal more than just myths. They saw reflections of their own struggles against idolatry and the ongoing attempt to align with the will of a God who promised not only physical rain but a pouring out of spiritual blessings. The prophets of Israel, aware of these powerful stories, used them to teach important lessons about the faithfulness and sovereignty of Yahweh, contrasting them with the inconsistency and dependence represented by the Canaanite deities. Each story of Baal facing other gods became a parable for the Israelites, a mirror of their struggles to keep faith amidst adversity and temptation. While Baal battled in the heavens, the Israelites fought on earth, each divine victory and defeat reflecting their own spiritual choices and their commitment to the covenant with Yahweh. Thus, the stories of Baal were not just entertainment or religiosity for the ancients, they were a constant dialogue between the seen and the unseen, between the forces that governed the natural world and those that guided the human heart, a dialogue that echoed through the centuries, continuously reminding everyone of the power, promise, and presence of the divine in every aspect of life. In the intertwined myths and devotions of the ancient East, Asherah, also known as Astarte among the Canaanites, emerged as a figure of power and mystery. This goddess, often seen as the consort of Baal, was revered as the mother of fertility, the lady of trees and forests, whose influence extended over all spheres of life and nature. The worship of Asherah was marked by a deep feminine element, reflected in rituals that celebrated motherhood, the earth, and the natural cycles that govern growth and renewal. Her altars were adorned with symbols of life, from tree trunks to statuettes that exalted the female form, representing the generosity and nurturing capacity of the earth. However, the veneration of Asherah wasn't limited to simple acts of worship. It permeated the social and religious structure, offering women a space for expression and authority within the religious context dominated by male figures. The priestesses of Asherah played central roles in these cults, leading rituals, maintaining sacred knowledge, and influencing community decisions, a rarity in a world where religious power was generally in the hands of men. Asherah's influence extended to the home and family life, where she was invoked as a protector of homes and children, a guardian who offered security against life's adversities and uncertainties. At a time when infant mortality was high and daily life was fraught with risks, devotion to Asherah offered spiritual comfort and tangible hope for many families. However, the worship of Asherah brought with it complex spiritual implications for the Israelites, who saw her as a threat to the purity of their monotheistic faith. The presence of Asherah symbols, such as sacred poles placed alongside Yahweh's altars, was a constant reminder of the tension between Canaanite practices and the biblical commandments that forbade idolatry. The prophets of Israel, vigilant guardians of the faith, regularly denounced the worship of Asherah, seeing it as a dangerous deviation from the path God had set for his people. They warned that the spiritual infidelity brought by worshipping foreign gods and goddesses like Baal and Asherah could lead to social and spiritual ruin, compromising the special relationship between Yahweh and the Israelites. The story of Asherah, therefore, is a fascinating study of how religious practices can influence and be influenced by the social and spiritual fabric of a community. It reflects not only the beliefs and hopes of a people but also the internal and external struggles that shape identity and faith across generations. In the tumultuous construction of faith and infidelity that characterized ancient Israel's days, figures emerged whose courage and conviction shone like beacons of hope and challenge. Among these, Elijah, the Tishbite, stood out as a spiritual giant, whose story of direct confrontation with the worship of Baal remains one of the most powerful narratives of faith in the Bible. At a time when Baal worship had infiltrated even the Israeli court under the reign of Ahab and his queen, Jezebel, Elijah emerged not just as a prophet but as a warrior for truth. The setting of his most dramatic challenge was Mount Carmel, a site soon to witness an epic confrontation between monotheistic faith and pagan idolatry. Elijah, before a divided and hesitant people, issued a challenge to the prophets of Baal. Both sides would build an altar and call upon their respective gods. The true God would respond with fire from heaven. While the 450 prophets of Baal fervently called out for hours, cutting themselves and performing their frantic dances, no sign of Baal appeared. The sky remained silent, indifferent to their pleas. Then, it was Elijah's turn. With a calm that defied the chaos around him, he rebuilt the Lord's altar that had fallen into ruins, using 12 stones to represent the tribes of Israel. In an act of unshakable faith, Elijah ordered water to be poured 3 times over the altar, soaking the sacrifice and filling the trench around it with water. His prayer to Yahweh was simple yet powerful, a plea for recognition and renewal of faith. Fire from heaven answered. Descending with divine ferocity, it consumed the sacrifice, the stones, the water, and even the dust itself, leaving the onlookers in absolute awe. In that moment, there was no doubt, Yahweh was the true God, and the people, with one resounding voice, proclaimed their allegiance, turning away from the idolatrous practices that had corrupted their souls and society. This showdown on Mount Carmel was not just an isolated miracle. It was a turning point, a tangible demonstration of Yahweh's supremacy over false gods and a call for spiritual renewal. Through his bold faith and decisive actions, Elijah not only challenged Baal but reignited the flame of true devotion in hearts that had grown cold in the face of idolatry. The stories of these prophetic challenges, with Elijah leading the charge, serve as eternal reminders of the power of genuine faith and the constant vigilance needed to maintain the purity of divine worship amidst the persistent seductions of error and deception. Throughout the centuries, the heart of Israel was a battleground of an ongoing struggle between faithfulness to the God of their ancestors and the allure of the pagan cults flourishing around them. Yet there were pivotal moments, true turning points, that marked the inevitable downfall of Baal worship and the restoration of pure monotheism among the Israelites. One such moment was under the reign of King Josiah, a ruler whose youth did not deter his determination to purify his nation's faith. After the discovery of the Book of the Law during repairs to the Temple in Jerusalem, Josiah was confronted with the depth of apostasy that had consumed Israel. The sacred text, nearly forgotten, acted as a mirror, reflecting the people's failings and infidelities, and ignited a reforming zeal in the young king. Josiah launched a rigorous campaign to eradicate the vestiges of Baal and Asherah worship. Altars were torn down, idols smashed, and idolatrous priests stripped of their duties. The practices that had become so deeply integrated into the social and religious fabric of Israel were uprooted with a ferocity that echoed the king's urgency to return to the purity of worshiping Yahweh. Beyond the physical actions, Josiah's reform was a movement of hearts and minds. He gathered the people of Judah and renewed the covenant with God, an act that not only reaffirmed monotheism but also redefined national identity around exclusive worship of Yahweh. The celebration of Passover, which he restored, was not just a festivity but a powerful symbol of renewal and redemption, echoing the ancient promises made to their forefathers. This wave of reforms had a ripple effect throughout Israeli society, reaffirming divine law and order in a time marked by instability and change. The fall of Baal worship, therefore, was not merely the result of royal decrees or physical destruction, it was a transformation of collective consciousness, a return to the roots of a faith established at the nation's foundation. These reforms showed that true strength of belief resides not in grand monuments or elaborate rituals but in unwavering fidelity to a divine ideal. The decline of Baal among the Israelites is a chronicle of loss and gain, a testament that even the most deeply rooted traditions can be challenged and transformed when a people rediscover the essence of their faith. The story of Israel and its kings, like Josiah, is a tale of spiritual rebirth, a reminder that true devotion to God requires both courage and conviction. In the corridors of time and the pages of Israel's sacred history, the lessons drawn from Baal worship resonate with clarity that transcends generations. The spiritual and social consequences of this disobedience were etched not only in the books of the prophets but also in the hearts and lives of God's people. The idolatry of Baal, a constant temptation for the Israelites, served as a dark mirror reflecting human frailty and the temptation to seek immediate solutions for deep-seated problems. Every altar built to this foreign god was not just stone upon stone but a symbol of the eroding trust between Israel and their God. The consequences were tangible: droughts, famines, and military defeats, each interpreted by the prophets as divine reprimands against the people's infidelity. But the lessons went beyond adversity. They spoke of the fundamental importance of faithfulness to a true God. Yahweh, unlike Baal, was not a God who needed ritualistic manipulations or bloody offerings to respond. He sought a contrite heart and an obedient spirit, promising in return a covenant of love and protection that would transcend the vicissitudes of earthly life. The prophets, like Elijah and Jeremiah, in their fiery confrontations against idolatry, called the people to repentance and highlighted the pitfalls of disobedience, the loss of identity and purpose, the corruption of society, and the eventual disintegration of the nation. They taught that idolatry was more than a religious transgression, it was an act of forgetting who they were as God's people and who God was for them. Through these harsh lessons, the Israelites learned that true faith was not a path free of challenges but a commitment requiring perseverance and constant renewal. The cycle of apostasy and return found its end not when adversity ceased but when the collective heart turned definitively toward Yahweh, recognizing in him not just the power to punish but the deep desire to restore and bless. The story of Baal and his rejection by the Israelites, therefore, is more than a record of religious conflicts. It is a chronicle of redemption and a growing understanding that adherence to a true God offers not only spiritual security but also the promise of a strengthened community, free from the chains of idolatry and despair. These lessons, forged in the furnaces of tribulation and error, remain vital, teaching all generations the invaluable worth of maintaining faith and fidelity amidst the shifting tides of human history. As the echo of Baal's ancient drums fades into the shadows of the past, the lessons that emerge from these ancestral stories resonate through the centuries, reaching our times with unexpected relevance. The narratives of the Israelites, their challenges, and their victories offer a mirror for us to reflect on what today might lead us astray from the true beliefs and values that uphold our faith and community. In ancient times, the Israelites faced the tangible temptation of idols carved from stone and wood, but the underlying challenge was much deeper: the allure of comfort, power, and the false security these images promised. Baal represented not just a foreign god but a promise of control over uncontrollable forces, an attempt to master the unmasterable, to guarantee rain for crops and success in ventures by means that seemed within human reach. Today, the idols that threaten to divert our focus might not be physical figures, but the temptations remain remarkably similar. In a society saturated with technology, consumerism, and an unending pursuit of status, the modern Baals can take the form of money, power, fame, or even the relentless quest for comfort and pleasure. These invisible idols promise to fill the void and offer control, but they often lead us away from the eternal truths that sustain our identity and purpose. The story of Baal teaches us that idolatry, in whatever form it takes, is a betrayal of our commitment to what is higher and true. It obscures the clear vision of the path God has laid out for us, replacing the simplicity of faith with the complexity of worldly demands. And so, as in the days of the prophets, we are called to question, what in our lives stands as a Baal, clamoring for our attention and adoration, leading us away from the devotion that should be reserved for God? Redemption, however, is always within our reach, a promise that spans history and is manifested in our daily choices. The ancient prophets not only condemned the wrong paths but also pointed the way back to the heart of God, where love and forgiveness are always available to those who seek to return to the original covenant. In this eternal echo, we are invited to reflect deeply, to discern and renounce the Baals we have erected on our own internal altars. It is a call to authenticity, humility, and the courage to stay true to the truth in a world that constantly challenges us to compromise our convictions. May we find the strength to reject today's temptations as we contemplate these stories and their lessons, standing firm in a faith that is not just a relic of the past but a living force that shapes our present and future, guiding us toward a life of true purpose and unshakable peace. Let these stories inspire us to examine our lives, identifying the modern Baals that may distract us from what truly matters. Faith, truth, and fidelity to God are beacons that guide us in times of uncertainty. By holding fast to these eternal values, we can experience true freedom and purpose. If you feel inspired by these lessons of faith and want to explore more about the timeless wisdom of the Scriptures, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. Here, we will continue to dive into the fascinating stories of the Bible, bringing insights that can transform lives. Join our community of truth seekers, and let's walk this path of discovery and growth together. Don't miss any updates. Click subscribe and be part of this exciting spiritual journey.